Welcome, Calvary's Love family. So excited to have you be a part of another week of House Church. We're talking about Mark chapter 12 this morning, specifically the red letters of Jesus. But before we get started, I just wanted to thank you so much for your support. It's because of people like you that we can do things like this. And we're just going to jump right into it. I get the privilege of talking with Reverend, Bishop, Principal, Evangelist, Terry.
I want none of those titles.
Mother, wife. There we
That's
go.
Yeah. Child of God.
Child of God, come on. And we're talking about Mark chapter 12. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
This first parable, basically Jesus talking about this vineyard and all of this vineyard owner, and he's sending all these people to go and basically get stuff from this vineyard for him. And these people that are running the vineyard, these farmers, are like beating and killing all these messengers.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
I thought that this parable was so interesting for Jesus to be speaking about, because in this format, he's actually speaking with Pharisees, Sadducees come in, Herodians come in, all these enemies of each other are uniting to corner Jesus. And we see that in the whole chapter. And so The chapter opens up with Jesus basically saying, like, there was this vineyard owner who, he went away, he owned the vineyard, and then he let people take care of the vineyard, as was customary of the time.
Yep.
And then when he sent messengers to take what was rightfully his from the vineyard, like the bounty of it, they kept killing the messengers or injuring them. And then he sent his own son, and they ended up not only like beating him and taunting him, but then killing him as well.
Yeah.
And I thought that, like, as I was reading it, it's just incredible to me that Jesus knew who he was talking to, but also that the Pharisees knew that this was about them.
Right. And then Jesus, knowing that, straight up says to them, I'll tell you, he will come and kill those farmers and lease the vineyard to others.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Savage Jesus.
Yeah, literally. Hashtag Savage Jesus. Put it in the comments. But I think this is really interesting because I love that Jesus isn't afraid to just speak the truth.
Yeah.
And, when we were talking about this, you were mentioning like this idea of cancel culture.
Yeah.
And you already brought up just now, like all these groups that normally were enemies, like the people that followed Herod. We had the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and they're coming together to trap Jesus. And we have this first parable, and we've got other situations where they're asking Jesus these questions after this to try to trap him. And can you maybe talk a bit about cancel culture and how this chapter really ties into how we can translate that to today?
Yeah, I think that when I was like reading through all these questions that they kept trying to kind of back Jesus into a corner, I was thinking about how many times, especially in this last year, people were demanding statements, or where do you stand, or who are you voting for, or where do you stand on? Yeah, like this, like people were doing that to basically group people together.
Right.
And then if your opinion didn't line up with mine, then I would cancel you.
Yep.
Right? Like then and Jesus is like always answering with like a completely different perspective. Like, I'm from a different kingdom altogether, and so are you. And like, the question of taxes, like, pay to Caesar what is Caesar's, but also you're made in the image of God. So just like the coin has the image of Caesar on it that belongs to him, you have the image of God, and so all of you belongs to God.
Right.
So like, fall under the government's authority, but also like give your whole lives over to God. And he just like goes beyond all of these limits that we want to put on him. And I think that we try to put people into a box, but we also put Jesus into a box where we want him to fit into our opinions, our perspectives. We might want a Jesus who looks and sounds like us and has our opinions, and then anything else that goes outside of it that we read about of him, we just like throw out that part. And that's not who Jesus is. Like,
Right.
there's the fullness of him, and he was going to the marginalized, and he was like always just pushing against what they thought he was going to be as the Messiah.
Right.
And so just going back to like this first parable of the vineyard, it was Jesus was telling them, like, I'm sending you messengers and messengers and messengers. And like, because you've been part of this vineyard and taking care of this vineyard, you think that you own it. And I just wrote this down. The vine dressers, that's the people that were taking care of the vineyard, in the parable thought that because they were tending the vineyard, they now owned it. They had become the authority over it. So when the message from the actual authority came, they could not recognize it or receive it. They actually rejected it to such a point that they murdered the Son in order to get what they wanted. And I asked myself the question, how am I murdering Jesus in order to get what I want?
Wow.
And I think that that's part of it, is I'm cutting out parts of who Jesus is in order to get what I want. Because I think I am the authority over my own vineyard.
Right.
And that's not it at all.
Right.
Jesus is the authority. And so when he's sending messages to me about, no, this is what my kingdom is like, this is who I am, this is who you're following, then when I reject them, I'm actually like putting him back on the cross and making him die all over again. And I'm cutting out pieces of him, and not fully accepting who he is and who he wants me to be in light of that. Right.
No, I love that. It's almost like this religious spirit of I'm doing this and transactional. Like I'm doing this, and I want this in return. And this is the image that I want. This is the kind of relationship I want with God. But what I love about this parable is that in the story, the owner of the vineyard, he keeps sending, and it's almost showing like this intense grace. Like, oh, I sent this person and you killed him. I still, I'm going to send someone else.
Yeah.
Oh, you killed them? I'm going to send somebody else.
Yeah.
Oh, you killed them? I'm going to send someone else. Then until finally, I'm going to send you the one person, like my one and only son.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send him to you because that's how much you matter to me.
Yeah.
But then they still no.
Yeah. And then it says, Jesus then quotes the Old Testament. He says, the stone the builders examined and rejected has become the cornerstone, the most important stone of all. This was the Lord's plan, and he is wonderful for our eyes to behold. And he's saying, you are examining me, you are pressing me with these questions, and you keep examining me and rejecting me, but I am the cornerstone. And that actually, that God uses that, that Jesus isn't blown away by this or upset by this, but that it's because of their questioning and backing him into a corner that leads him to the cross, which is the fulfillment of God's plan altogether. So he uses all of it for the good of humankind. But then, like you said at the beginning, Jesus does say that these vine dressers, you will be killed. And I think that points to the fact that they won't inherit eternal life because they keep rejecting the message.
Right.
And so
that's scary.
Death comes.
Yeah. That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
That to be in that place, I would not want to be one of them.
But we find ourselves there.
Yeah.
I think so many times we read it and we think, oh, those Pharisees, but how many times do we look through this filter of self in our own constructed worldview that we want the gospel, we want church, we want other people to fit into who we want them to be or who we've built our kingdom, our own kingdoms to be. And then we miss out on the fullness of who Jesus is and what we can inherit. And we become like the Pharisees, where we know that the conviction is there, but then we do nothing about it.
Right. And
that's what it says, that they heard this, they knew it was about them, but they kept pressing him with questions anyway.
Yeah. No, it's good. Hey, I want to move on to another thought here.
Yeah.
In verses 28 through 34, it's talking about the most important commandment. And Jesus, they're trying to question him. Let's jump there.
Yeah.
So verse 28, one of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important?
Yeah.
And then Jesus basically responds that you are to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these.
Yeah.
And what I love about this is who we are as Calvary's Love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were talking about this one time, and you were telling me about how, this is what Sea Love was rooted on. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is Calvary's Love. It's where our name came out of. It's this actual Mark version because it includes all components of self. It's heart, mind, soul, and strength. And so all of ourselves are given over to loving God and loving others. And again, in talking to the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Herodians, they kept trying to weigh out laws. They had written down over 600 laws from the Old Testament. So they were weighing out which ones are the best, which ones are the worst, which ones should we definitely follow, which ones are okay to miss. And Jesus was saying, no, it all sums up in this. Love God and love other people. And it's a really great sentiment. But to truly love God and love other people means that I come to the Lord and I allow him to change me, right, to expose things in me, that's love. And then when I love other people, it means people that are different than me, people that come against maybe my views, my opinions. Let that bump up against me and expose things in me. And that true love sometimes means I come and I apologize. I acknowledge my wrongs. I could
be wrong.
Yeah, true love isn't, oh, you don't agree with me. Okay, never mind.
Right.
I don't need relationship. Culture. Right. I don't need relationship with you. Instead, true love is I see this in me and Jesus is working on this in me. So can you help me? I see this in you. And let's, as iron sharpens iron, it says, right? So one should sharpen the other. That when we brush up against each other, that's actually the kingdom of God at hand.
Yep.
And I think that's so beautiful. That then we can start to see conflict, or we can start to see, exposure of our sin or our stuff actually being a good thing. That when God lifts that to the surface, it's so that we can get rid of it and become more like him. And that's why this commandment I think is so great, because then you don't have to worry about keeping all these laws and all these things. And I think some people think, I'm becoming a Christian, I'm following Jesus. Okay, here's the list of do's and here's a list of don'ts. And that's what it means to be a Christian, especially in the world today. And this is what it means to be a Christian. What it means is loving and truly loving. And that means listening to one another and not canceling out voices.
And not just coming with your preconceived thoughts and your questions to try to fit your narrative.
Yes.
But trying to truly seek out the answer from God.
Yeah.
And we've got two minutes left. Yeah. Just over 2 minutes. And I want to have our final thoughts on this. All these stories are lining up, in my opinion, on this last part, which is the widow's offering.
Yeah.
And I love that you talked about, loving the Lord your God and loving others. And it's such an easy thing to say, but not always the easiest thing to follow through with. And this woman, it says that she gives 2 mites, which real quickly, just to break that down, is a denarius, which was a full day's of work, equals 6 mays. 1 may equals 2 pondions. 1 pondion equals 2 Assyrians. 1 or Assyrian equals 8 mites. When you figure it all out, 2 mites are about 1% of a daily's work. So a mite was basically the equivalent of $1. So she has $2, and she doesn't just give 1.
Right.
Which maybe some people might have done, hey, I need to have and it's just $1, but hey, I need to keep $1. I'm going to give $1.
Right, that's not even 10%. That's 50%, right?
Right.
That's
but
okay.
she gives 100% of what she has.
Right.
And then Jesus responds, she has given more than all of you combined.
Right.
And I love this story because it almost points me back to the rich young ruler. And this rich young ruler who comes to Jesus. Earlier, we talked about this a few weeks ago in Mark. He comes to Jesus like, I'm doing all these things. I'm getting it all right. He thinks, getting all right. But is he really loving the Lord?
Yeah.
And is he really loving others?
Yeah.
And Jesus pushes on that.
Yeah.
And this is what it meant.
Yeah.
This story right here was the answer.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, and just before this offering, Jesus is talking about the scribes who would actually like disenfranchise widows. They would come in, and because they didn't make money by being scribes, they would find ways to make money by going to the widows and like really collecting an offering from them. Oh gosh. I'm sorry. Just one more thing.
Finish your thought.
Okay,
Finish your thought.
okay.
Yeah.
So then Jesus is literally saying, like, the ones that you're taking advantage of, I am exalting.
Yep.
I am, again, here's the kingdom of God that's upside down. Like, the least are the greatest. The last should be first. And that's who Jesus sees and lifts up and glorifies, is because out of their maybe lack or poverty, they see Jesus and say, there is nothing that's worth more than this.
Right.
And so I'm going to give everything.
If you could say one more thing to the audience today, what would that be out of all of this?
I think that what I've been most challenged by in reading this chapter is allowing God to expose the things in me. And how am I holding on to things that I need to just let go of into the offering? And so comparison is the better word, between the Pharisees and the widow. The Pharisees wanted to hold on to their idea and their vineyard that they thought was theirs, and then the widow had a little bit left, and she even gave that over. So I want God to just like take everything, like anything that's not of him, like just take it all. And expose the things in me so that I could really know who he is fully and see him.
That's awesome. Hey, this has been a great conversation today. We hope that you have enjoyed it. And before we tune out here, I just wanted to thank you once again for your support, making things like this happen. We love you guys. We hope you have the best week. We'll see you in celebration service next Sunday. Have a great day, church.